And hello everyone, my name is Apulak and it's so good to have you all with us. We have a great set of discussions to follow my presentation. So I'll quickly walk you through a presentation that I made for you, touching upon a topic which I'm sure you've heard several times, but we wanted to touch upon a very important element of workspace of the future. Let's dig right in, right? So, when we talk about digital transformation, there are various ways how you define your digital transformation initiative. And this has been a journey for most organizations which has taken years, right? And we discuss it as we go along, right? It's not a point blank solution that we're talking about. It's a continuous journey. So at Teal, but we understood that, when we talk about any digital transformation initiative, it has to tie with a business objective, right? Until and unless you don't see a business imperative, no organization would ever invest, any money on a digital transformation process. So we've tried to bucketize these three into business processes, business strategy, and internal and external stakeholders. The one that gets me really excited is the one about internal and external stakeholders, because if you've noticed, the last couple of years have been so different than we've ever seen, right? Traditionally, whenever we talk about digital transformation, a lot of discussions happen to be around business strategy or business processes. But of late, there's been a lot of focus on the stakeholders, in particular how we look at employees. Let me substantiate this with some data here, right? Before I do that, if you've noticed one thing, regardless of whatever objective that you're trying to achieve, somewhere I probably call this the least common multiple or the common denominator which ties all these three together is somewhere cost optimization. Let me also be mindful of the fact when I speak about cost optimization, it is not necessarily we're talking about cost cutting. I think the mantra here is doing more with less. Let's see how this takes up, right? So like I said, when we speak about reasons why people have gone for digital transformation, like I said, issues around business agility, process transformation, operational efficiency will always remain to be important. But what becomes very, very critical, at least in the near term, past and going forward, are areas around improved customer experience, employee productivity, and very importantly, cost optimization. So like I said, these are some of the key organizational drivers to achieve digital transformation. And somewhere organizations understand, that to make things happen, for the last 2 years, they've seen one thing, that work never stood at a standstill. And for that, they have to thank the employees. But the employee also has come a long way in terms of how they work, how they operate, and what they expect out of their organization. So let's look at how workforce transformation actually works as a link to achieve cost optimization. If you've noticed some numbers here, I'm sure you would probably corroborate that within your work cultures, within your work environments, and industry at large. So if you see, for instance, 28% decline in office space and overhead costs due to a hybrid work approach. I mean, I think we are all slowly but surely going back to our offices, but I still feel very strongly hybrid work as a concept is here to stay, right? We do not expect offices to go back to an environment where it's only an office space. It would be a mix of both office space and remote work, right? That in itself, anybody who is witnessing this change would see a direct dip in not only capex costs but opex costs as well, right? And let's also discount the fact that the entire gravitational shift towards hybrid IT is successful when both the employee and the employer feel empowered and successful. Now, this is substantiated by my second point, where you say 62% businesses feel that they have improved on the productivity and the performance of the employees have risen. So I think somewhere a truly, mature modern workspace helps you optimize the work that your employee does and helps you focus on the work at hand, right? So simply there are a couple of more data points that we have here. For instance, 68% organizations agree that hybrid work helps them in retaining talent and reduce costs in hiring and training new employees. I think we've come through a phase of where there was a lot of attrition and so on and so forth, but we're right now seeing a phase of a transition where people seem to be contented and are looking for more stability, as we discussed. So as you can see, the workplace is evolving. So at Think Teal, we decided to break it down into 4 phases. Let me walk you through. So about a decade back, when we spoke about remote work, right? Remote work was essentially factored in to optimize your costs, right? Then came a phase where organizations understood by allowing remote work, not only do I achieve cost optimization, but I also get access to talent which is untapped so far. Imagine for a country like ours, where a significant population still resides outside your urban metros. And that's a pool of talent that a lot of organizations are willing to work with. But right now, due to the confines of an office environment, is not allowed to do so. So I think that was a tectonic shift in terms of how we look at remote work. Then came the pandemic, which kind of made everything upside down. So we actually saw remote work equal to business continuity, right? We saw how the fact that having a device and a connectivity helps you achieve business continuity. So as you see, remote work was essential to keep the lights on, which was never the case in phase 1 and phase 2. So there was an added element of cost optimization, talent retention, and supporting remote work at scale. See, what you need to understand very importantly here is when we talk about phase 1 and phase 2, there was a very small percentage of employees working out in a remote facility. Perhaps it was barely 2 to 3%. Comes phase 3, comes COVID-19, we see that sudden spike that almost 90 to 95% working out of the remote locations. Then comes the new normal, which is the normal that we're living in, where we understand, hey, you know what? We worked out of remote locations and it was beneficial for both the employee and the employer. So you're trying to embrace the entire concept of hybrid work with the help of new and emerging technologies. So this is how we define the future objectives of a secure hybrid workplace. If you see 4 key elements, 2 which are hard-coded and 2 which are soft-coded but very important for every organization. A, obviously allowing anytime, anywhere work, very importantly, but to do so, right, you have to ensure that security is not compromised. We've heard a lot about these days about how we're talking about zero trust is a way to ensure that security is not compromised. I'll come to that, right? But then, very importantly, 2 components that I'd like to focus today on is around employee experience and inclusivity and making work policies, improve them and making them sustainable. Like I said, when you talk about, because most organizations, have been focusing a lot on, making their organization secure and allowing anytime, anywhere work flexibility. This, as I can clearly understand, are the core objectives for every organization, right? But if you back them up with softer elements like employee inclusivity, right, and sustainable work policies, because we hear a lot about, how important ESG is for every company that we operate on. Issues around environment, issues around sustainability, issues around governance. So I think that would lead to a much more fruitful work environment. So in effect, you are not only reducing your real estate footprint, right? You're getting cost optimization, but you're also helping achieve your ESG matrix also. You're transitioning from a CAPEX to an OPEX-based business model. You're trying to make physical offices smarter and optimized. Very important. one should not take a reading that the office is dead. By no means. I think what we're trying to say is the office of tomorrow has to step up in terms of how we are looking the entire hybrid IT, where on-premise data centers are stepping up and keeping in line with how cloud operate in very similar fashion, how physical offices become smarter and more optimized, right? And eventually supporting employees with productivity boosting measures, right? But having said so, this is what we are trying to achieve, and this is what the wish list is. But to do so, there will always be certain challenges. On your left, as you can see, there are certain challenges that most of IT leaders have faced. At least this is done through a time period of past 6 to 8 months. And this is a data point that we've gathered with our CIOs leaders. And what we've noticed is, many of our, hybrid work policies were done in a rush because that was the need of the hour. And because it was done in a rush, there were a lot of issues around managing IT investments, managing multiple vendors, not able to achieve ROI, challenges around technology obsolescence, right? So somewhere it's very important that we get these parts right. So as you can see, we further asked our IT leaders, what are some of the ways they are planning to mitigate these, right? So they're planning to standardize the tools and solutions that are required to simplify business operations. They're rethinking their IT strategies, which are more tuned of workplace of tomorrow. And it is flexible for supporting on-prem, work from home scenarios and a smart office scenario, right? So in a nutshell, one of the stepping stones in my limited view is to have an integrated workspace. And I'll help you understand this. See, if you look at this slide, so you have the endpoint device at the center, and there are 4 key pivots which are driving this. One is pre-deployed applications, one is built-in security capabilities, remote management devices, and last but not least, context-based support. Let me take each one of them one by one. See, if you see the way we've been using device, like I said in the very beginning, during the pandemic, one thing was very clear to us, and data corroborates that, it supports this. There was an actual big uptake in endpoint devices sales across the globe. And the reason for that was very simple, because it was understood that the device is your new office. Wherever you are, your office resides there. But to enable that, while I know there's a lot of back-end infrastructure that supports you, and we'll come to that, but at the forefront, there are 2 very key elements which help you achieve that. A, your actual endpoint device, right? And B, a connectivity tool which helps you connect with the world, right? So in effect, you're trying to reduce the burden on your IT teams. You're trying to mitigate security risks, right? You're simplifying the entire application rollout processes, and you are also helping in predictive maintenance of devices. Let me take each one of them one by one. So as you can see, we've kind of given a short list of what are some of the existing gaps that exist in the market, how intelligent endpoint devices are evolving, and what business benefits to be achieved out of this. So if you see, typically when onboarding happens, there are challenges in terms of scaling deployments in a quick time. It's usually a complex task. But if you automate the entire software application updates, if you preload application software into devices basis the employee that is coming on board, and you manage the entire configuration remotely, you're actually trying to reduce those gaps that exist in the market. So effectively, so you have no interruptions of work, right? You're saving time and cost, no need to deal with multiple vendors, and most parts for IT management through cloud, you're optimizing IT teams and effect managing cost optimization. Coming to this very important element of security, as we said, a lot of emphasis is around zero trust, and in a integrated workspace scenario where you have security built in, ground up, it helps you in identity-based application access anytime, anywhere. You have AI-based prevention, detection, and response, and effectively, all of this is also possible through remote endpoint management. Uh, uh, One piece of technology that we've seen gain significant traction, uh, thanks to, in part, the pandemic, was the adoption of a technology what we call as VDI. Because VDI, how it was used, say a couple of years back, to how it is seen now, is completely altered, right? VDI has been very instrumental in actually managing your remote endpoints, at the same time making them secure. So you are truly talking about an integrated workspace where you have control of the application access of individuals, yet without compromising on the inclusivity aspect of employees. So, all of this is possible through cloud technologies of remote monitoring. You have automated installation aimed at zero manual interventions, and analytics-driven device health monitoring, right? And the last bit is about automated service support. So, for instance, if you are a large organization, one of the key challenges is, how do I make sure that I have the least or zero downtime of devices? Typically, that's one of the biggest challenges for any IT team, right? Now, this is where a huge leap or improvement is what we see with automated service support. For instance, we have actually service elements which are based on AI and ML, which are used to predict the time when you may have a problem, what kind of problem, and what is the remedial measures. So in a way you're reducing this manpower and costs, right? Predictive analytics is also helping in your query resolution, because somewhere you're giving a pattern of the challenges that an employee faces, and you're able to resolve them in quick succession, right? And obviously you have third-party driven teams who are experts in their area. So you give proactive support through AI ML based minimized business interruptions. So if you see, while at the center, like I said in the beginning, is the endpoint device, but the four key elements which make it a compelling solution is around automated service support. It is around having a very secured work environment. It is around having a remote configuration management possible. So probably I'll leave you with this, but before I end and conclude my slides, there's some of the key points I probably would want you to walk through. When you're talking about future-proofing your work environment, there's some of the 8 areas that I probably thought I'll leave you with. Because there is nothing like one size which fits all when you talk about, because this is not a point solution that we're talking about. When we talk about workplace transformation, when we talk about designing workplaces of the future, it depends completely on what are your requirements. What are the demographics of your workforce? Are they mostly scattered around different geographies, or are they concentrated on a particular spot? Is your existing IT team equipped to manage all the change involved? How do you look at cost? Are your budgets approved to support and manage devices in a hybrid work setup? What is the productivity trade-off in terms of sticking to your traditional IT infrastructure vis-a-vis to the new normal, right? And very importantly, take a rejig on your device strategy, your device security posture, and very important, like I said, I always like to conclude, when you have a momentum and when you decide that you need to go for certain changes, it's super important that you get your leadership buy-in, right? So, but to discuss this further, I have a very, very stellar panel with me, and I'll get you answers which were probably left unanswered by now. But that's it for me. It's a wrap from my end. Thank you so much.